Clubhouse.
Welcome to the first teaser episode of Pod Clubhouse's coverage of the brand new Obi-Wan Kenobi show from Disney+. This is Paul, your stalwart host of many a sci-fi podcast on Pod Clubhouse, and with me, virtually anyway, is my old high school friend, Mark. How you doing, Mark?
Hey, Paul, I'm doing great. I'm really excited for Kenobi. Just let's just do this thing, LFG.
What's the thing you're most excited about with Obi-Wan Kenobi?
You know, we're 10 years out from what we saw in the prequels. Obi-Wan's in a weird place right now. I mean, he was the man in the prequels, but I think now he's knocked back a peg. And I think he's kind of lost his way. I think he's going about things like things were normal like they used to be, but really things have changed.
One thing that I've seen in the trailers that they've put out so far is that they've shown him using blasters, which is something that in the prequels he very much considered beneath himself.
Very uncivilized.
Right, exactly. It was distasteful when he had to finish off Grievous with the blaster in episode 3. And now I've seen a couple of clips that appear to be him using a blaster. I understand, like, using a lightsaber in this era is going to be bad news. It's going to instantly identify you as a Jedi and someone that the bad guy should come after. But still, the blaster part of it, I thought, was beneath his prior dignity.
Yeah, you know, and I think Yoda, when he got his butt kicked by Sheev, Palpatine, I think he just kind of accepted it. He was like, okay, it's done. We got beat. I'm out. I'm going to go live in the swamp. But I think, I think Ben, the zinger we got from Uncle Owen there in the trailer, he's like, what, you're going to mess up Luke just like you did Anakin? I don't think so. But Obi-Wan's just like, this is what we do. We take the kids, we train them. Qui-Gon brought us this idea of the living force. I think Ben doesn't get that yet. So I really want to see Ben hit rock bottom, and then we hear a footstep, boosh, we get Qui-Gon Jinn schooling Obi-Wan.
Whoa, that's quite a prediction. I have not heard anything about Liam Neeson's involvement yet with this. Have you?
I have not, but I know a lot of people have been speculating, but I think if he's in there, they have kept it under wraps. And also, are we going to see Natalie Portman? Are we going to see Palpatine himself? There's a lot of characters that could pop up.
They do have a cast list as it is on IMDb. Everybody knows Hayden Christensen is returning as Darth Vader, a 6'2" Darth Vader instead of a 6'7" Darth Vader. But whatever. We're not supposed to notice that, I suppose. What do you think about that? Do you have any trepidation about Hayden returning to that role, or open arms?
Open arms. I think I've been watching some of the pressers, and you can see, how excited he is. And, he kind of got a bad rap. The dialogue was pretty rough, and, George took a lot of heat for that. But, of course, if you hearken over to the sequels, it's, there was the Poe line where he's like, somehow Palpatine returned. And there's
everyone's like, oh, man, that's a real thing.
Yeah. And then there's the meme, with George going, bad dialogue, huh?
Right. One thing that Hayden brings to the table that can't be discounted is if you watch any of his body of work, he's a tremendous physical actor. Whatever you think about emoting, whatever, but in terms of being able to execute stunts and fighting and that kind of stuff, he might be like a younger Keanu Reeves in that era, like not really gonna drive home, say, heavy character work, but being able to bring in a lot of that physical presence that can't be discounted.
There's no doubt he dedicated himself to the character, and he's just really into playing him again. I just think it's going to be exciting. I mean, he's torn between two identities, and to see that play out and see how he plays that is going to be, it's going to be interesting.
Also returning, we have the actors that played both Owen and Beru, Joel Edgerton and Bonnie. How would you say that? P.S.? Let's go with P.S. Maybe P. Joel Edgerton in the intervening years has been super busy, not only acting, but directing, writing, that kind of stuff.
Oh, I didn't know that.
His biggest movie that he's directed has been a movie called The Gift. Came out in 2015, but it starred Jason Bateman and Rebecca Hall as the leads.
Oh, I saw that movie. That was a weird movie.
Yeah, and he played I don't know. I guess the antagonist, but it was actually a guy that hadn't done anything wrong, right? If I remember the twist on the movie. But he's been interested in the creative end of things and been super busy, both in front of him, behind the camera.
Do you think his character will just be moving the plot forward, or do you think he'll be in the show quite a bit? I kind of feel like they may just use him to get the story going.
He's credited in 6 episodes, but, well, for one thing, IMDb has very iffy stats and figures and things before a show gets started. You know, those things aren't always correct. Should this show just remain episode by episode, Kenobi just kind of looking over the hill at the Lars moisture farm, seeing how
It'll
Luke
get a
is
little
doing?
slow after a while, wouldn't it?
It definitely would. So I'd imagine that even though he's credited with 6 episodes, that might have been what they needed to do in order to get him.
Yeah, and I don't think it's a big spoiler because it's been all over the trailers, but we're going off world. I think some people have been complaining we're on Tatooine too much with Boba Fett and Mando and stuff. So I think we're going to see Kenobi just go off world, and maybe most of the story takes place outside of Tatooine. I don't know. I'm excited.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there was this assumption maybe that he just stuck around and made sure nothing bad happened to Luke, but it makes kind of a lot more sense if he spent a substantial amount of time away from Tatooine because of the attraction that it might bring to Tatooine, were he there all the time.
So why does he leave? Is there something going on with Leia? Is Yoda giving him a phone call through the Force? Is there another Jedi that's reached out that needs help? What's going on?
That is a great question. We won't know until very early tomorrow. But I think the answer probably lies in the presence of the Inquisitors. Now, I am a pretty big Star Wars fan, but I have to admit I'm not complete when it comes to the Rebels animated series.
Your training is incomplete, Padawan.
It is. It is. Can you help me understand, even though I've read all the EU books, or what do they call them, Legends books, maybe for the audience, what is an Inquisitor?
I've been trying to brush up because you're right. My exposure to the Inquisitors came from Star Wars Rebels, which was, I kind of wasn't a huge fan. And then I rewatched it. I was like, oh, wow, this is good stuff. And I've kind of got the Vader comic. We saw a lot of the Inquisitors in there. And I just got that. And I'm kind of really enjoying it. But I think Palpatine wanted this dark army. And my kind of theory, another harebrained theory, and I don't have hair, by the way.
Hair's overrated.
Yeah, But I think, for one, it's a power check on Vader, right? He's got these Force-sensitive army that he can call on. And just in case, maybe the Grand Inquisitor becomes stronger than Vader, okay, out of here, Vader. Now, he's always got stuff up his sleeve. But the stated goal, I guess, is to track down the Jedi. And he ends up putting Vader in charge of these guys and gals. Vader's not a big fan. He sees them as pathetic. And they're fallen Jedi just like he is. I guess the Grand Inquisitor used to be a temple guard on Coruscant. So I think it's a reflection of himself. He sees in them, and maybe he's not too high on himself right now. So he keeps on chopping off their arms. And the Grand Inquisitor's like, why are you doing that, bro? And he says, well, they're fighting like Jedi. They're too defensive. They need to be more offensive, and they need to experience loss, kind of like he has. It's kind of interesting to see Vader in charge of these Inquisitors. And I think the Inquisitors fear him pretty strongly. And I think we'll see that play out. When they're out there hunting Jedi, it's kind of like, don't get in trouble or the boss is going to be upset.
Ewan McGregor has been candid in recent interviews, not historical interviews, about his affiliation with this show going back a few years now, and actually saying that he had to lie in a lot of interviews, even when he knew what was going to happen was happening. So that tells me that hopefully the brains behind things at Star Wars HQ and at Lucasfilm are showing some forethought in trying to string together a meaningful master plot, sort of Kevin Feige of the Marvel universe thinking. That's way too much credit. No, the sequel series is enough to show you that, no, they haven't done that. But maybe, just maybe, in terms of like damage control, they are starting to think that way. What makes me say that is, did you play
The Fallen Order?
Fallen Order? Yes, that's it. Yes.
Yeah, that was another one. I was playing it. I kind of got stuck, and I kept on having to look at walkthroughs. And then I wanted to see the story, so I ended up going to YouTube and just watching the cutscenes. And yeah, that's a good point, because there was a lot of good Inquisitor action in there as well.
I think they were trying to teach us what Inquisitors were through that. If you perhaps weren't a Rebels fan, not everybody's down for animated shows, but that game had a lot of penetration. They talked about it on South Park one week as an enticement to get the boys to do something. A woman was going to give them Jedi Fallen Order. So it was out there in the zeitgeist. Yeah, like you said, there was a lot of Inquisitor action in there, and you get the chance to cut their arms off too.
The whole aftermath of the Jedi Purge is just really a fun timeline that they're playing in here. Yeah, and we do know the fate of some of these Inquisitors. If you go to Rebels, because Rebels happens, right before pretty much Episode 4, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
Spoiler alert, with the Grand Inquisitor, he doesn't quite make it.
Well, I think the spoiler alert should already be well known in that Star Wars happens. And I understand things were made out of order, but there aren't any Inquisitors moving forward. So it's like once the job is done, I think it's kind of curtains for these guys.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we see, I guess it would be in Jedi Fallen Order, we see what happens after the Inquisitor moves along. I think you could say move along. That's something I'm a little confused about. Did they just completely disappear by the time Episode 4 starts? I think you're right.
I think they do, but they make it pretty dicey for the Jedi in the meantime.
Yeah, I'm really wondering, and we probably shouldn't get into it now, but I don't know if you've heard this Ahsoka fan theory. We'll have to talk about that sometime because, to your point about what are Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau up to, do they have a master plan? And there's a theory out there that I find really interesting, and I hope is what we're getting. It involves us going on a kind of a Star Trek style different timeline where the sequel trilogy may happen again in a different way. The story may go a different direction.
Whoa.
No, it totally blew my mind, Paul. Like literally.
Wow. Retconning your own $3 billion worth of movies. Wow.
Oh boy. Yeah. And it's because apparently the story group, the Jon Favreau, the Dave Filoni types, they weren't involved in the sequel trilogy. So I think there might be a little background tension there. And I think they kind of want to represent George. And I think that the fact that Disney kind of tossed George's ideas for 7, 8, 9 the trash can, I think some of us are not too keen on that.
Yeah. I mean, we could turn our teaser into a very long discussion
right.
on that element of it. I sure hope that those two have a lot more to say about the future of Star Wars. I know that it's very uneven. Like certain shows are under their umbrella and other shows are not. I think The Acolyte, for instance, is not, even though that's getting a lot of interesting press and leaks and that kind of stuff. Obi-Wan has a partial Jon Favreau, Dave Filoni background in that Deborah Chow is the series director. Deborah Chow directed several episodes of The Mandalorian, 2 of them, The Sin and The Reckoning. So I think we're going to get some of that outlook. There's also Andrew Stanton is involved, most well known for his work with Pixar, like WALL-E and Finding Nemo, shows like that.
Yeah, Deborah Chow has a good reputation for her work already. And, I think that's why people are feeling pretty good about that, I think.
And also we should mention Hossein Amini, who is credited as a writer who wrote some of The Alienist. Probably his biggest movie that he's written is Drive, the one with Ryan Gosling.
Oh, I really like that movie.
Yeah, that's a pretty great movie.
It's got the synthwave 80s music. Dun, 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 dun,
yeah.
dun, dun.
Yeah, all that's very stylish. Lots of big stars, and Oscar Isaac's in it. Bryan Cranston's in it. It's a great movie. So okay, we hopefully will skew close to our trusted shepherds, Dave and John, with this series. There has always been intentional blank spots in the history of Star Wars. There's certain areas that when they were writing the novels, making the comics, that George said, okay, you can play there, and no, you can't play there. Before the Clone Wars show and movie came out, the Clone Wars era was one of those things. One of those things has been, say, Yoda's background. No one can touch it. And perhaps this era has also been in that intentionally left blank span of time so that you could come back and tell this story correctly.
Yeah, I really wonder how much George or how little George is involved. I know they had him on as like a creative consultant at some point, but knowing that John and Dave Filoni, these guys, they look up to George big time, and I'm sure they're running some ideas at least by him and getting his approval, which is kind of cool to think about. That he's back there in the wings like a gangster boss, going, "Yeah, I like that."
Throughout the production of all those shows, Book of Boba Fett and Mandalorian, there has been set pictures and video and things showing George on set. I don't know if it's just like the one day he visits, they get the camera out. I'm not positive on that, but I think while he's there, they probably soak up as much as they can.
Yeah, it's got to be a love-hate relationship.
Well, Dave, he may be one of the last true disciples that they have around there. He had to learn how to tell Star Wars stories directly from George when he made the Clone Wars TV show. And he's like the only one that got that level of masterclass level instruction on what makes Star Wars Star Wars.
Yeah, I have the same perception. He's George 2.0 with a cowboy hat. So
Right. Right. Anyway, I think we've said what we need to say about our anticipation for Obi-Wan Kenobi dropping. The first 2 episodes, May 27th, 2022, and it's a 6-episode arc. Ewan McGregor's already said he's game for a sequel series, so we know he doesn't die at the end.
Ooh, good catch.
Yeah, spoiler, everyone. If people wanted to find you online, Mark, how could they reach you?
At Jiggy Nut on Twitter.
And I am Paul V. Daley on Twitter, or you can reach me at Pod Clubhouse on Twitter or podclubhouse.com. If you like this podcast and want to hear more about Mark and I chatting about Star Wars, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts so that other people can find our podcast and share in the love of Star Wars. Any parting words, Mark?
May the Force be with you, Paul.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for listening. This has been an original Pod Clubhouse production. Pod Clubhouse is a podcast network dedicated to encouraging collaboration among podcasters and friends to bring a fresh voice and diverse perspective on a wide array of content. Please visit and leave a comment for us at podclubhouse.com. Rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast feeds on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find us at Pod Clubhouse. Our DMs are always open, and we'd love to hear from you.